Hey guys, welcome to the CJ Murray podcast, where we are learning to dream better. Today's guest is Dave Russell. He is the lead graphic designer for OtterBox, which has served exclusive graphics to customers such as Target, AT&T, Verizon, Realtree, NFL, Disney, Marvel, Pixar, and Lucasfilm, which is quite the lineup. He also has a passion project on YouTube as a custom toy creator. Look up Dr. Toys, that is DR Toys. This was an inspiring conversation, and the bottom line is know your gifts and calling from God. Work really hard at them, and don't give up on what you're passionate about. Just show up and do what you do best. Thank you so much for listening, guys. Please enjoy this conversation with Dave Russell.
In high school, I never thought of going to college. I was just like there's no way I'm going to college because I'm just not academically inclined. But then as I started to kind of hone my skill in art, my dad, being an education guy, was like, "Hey, I really think it would be good for you to study art." And so I was like, okay. So I started praying about it, and I was like, okay, God, you have this for me. And a PCC rep came through, showed us the school. I was like, wow, that's pretty great. Um, and to be totally transparent and honest, I went to a really, really strong fundamental Baptist church. And the idea was, I was actually told, no, God's called you to be a youth pastor by leadership in our church. And I was like, he didn't tell me. like, I'm
I
glad he
didn't get the
told you.
memo.
No. And they were like, no, you don't need to go to that college. You need to go to a different college that was more for preaching and ministry and like youth ministry and stuff like that. And I was like, what? But God didn't. That's not the desire that God's put in my heart at all. Because I've always been, even when I was a teenager, I was super outgoing, and I always helped in our junior church, and I always volunteered and ran a bus route with my dad, and so I was always around youth and super involved and active in it. So they just assumed, oh, that's what God called you to do. And I was like, that's not I enjoy doing that as part of a ministry, but that's not my desire to do that for my career. Like, God has given me this gift of art. I'm really interested in pursuing that. And I remember specifically hearing the words, "Oh, artists are a dime a dozen, and you'll never make it." And I was like, wow, that's and my dad, having the wisdom that he had, went and told at the time his own boss. He was like, "You stay out of my son's relationship with him and God. Let him figure that out." And my dad totally supported me and said, "Hey, if God's called you to art, that's what you got to do. If you're pursuing the wrong thing, then your life is going to be awful. But if that's what you think God's calling you to do, then pursue it." And so he was totally supportive of me, even though he doesn't quite understand artists. He was like, "Go for it." So that was kind of more maybe not so much a leap of faith, but just having the understanding of what God was calling me to do, in order to actually go into the arts and actually study the arts. So that's kind of where, and then when I went to be totally honest, when I went to PCC, it was the way that I grew up, the curriculum, it was a booklet, and you had to kind of it was self-paced. Actually, for me, being in front of a classroom and having a teacher put on the board, and visually, I excelled. Not to brag, but I made Dean's List all 4 years of undergrad.
Oh, wow.
So and
There you go.
I think I also took it super serious because I was like, wow, this is the one thing that God's given me. I've got 4 years to actually figure this out. So I'm gonna work my tail off because I this is my one shot. If I can't make this work, I don't know. I'll be working pulling weeds for people or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's not what I wanted to do. So I kind of went with the mindset of like, this is what God's given me. I got to make the best of it at this time in my life that I'm in this point. I got to make the best of it.
No plan B.
There was no plan B for me. I can't play guitar.
Oh man.
While we're on the topic, I'm curious, just because we're talking about um the church ministry and they wanted you to be youth pastor. When we were on that original call with the rest of the college students, you talked about being active in your church. What are some ways that you as an artist have been able to fill in some gaps in serving your church?
So I've actually um, I've done so much work for the for our church here. Just they're like, oh hey, can you help design a banner or can you help do this? And I've always just jumped right in. Fortunately for me, our church has grown so large that our pastor reached out and was like, hey, do you think we could actually utilize a full-time artist on staff? And I was like, yes, sir, 100% you can. And so he actually a girl from PCC, Paula. I don't know if you know Paula, a Filipino girl. Um,
What's your last name?
Yeah.
I it just slipped my mind. Anyways, she's a student from PCC, super great, like amazing. She actually is on church staff there now. So, but I've worked in our junior church here at my church for the last 16 years. Our first year here, I kind of got in and was like, I told my wife, I said, I'm not going to just jump right in. Like, I want to kind of see the ministry and see where I could best be used. And God opened up the junior church door so easily for me, it wasn't even funny. So I was like, all right, here it is. And like, I love it. Like I said earlier, I grew up helping out in our junior church when I was a kid, in high school. And so for me, it's a blast. And I don't know per se that we use our art all the time in junior church, but it's just it's something that I enjoy doing, and I'm a kid at heart, so I fit right in. And they have snack time.
That's always a win.
Oh man. Man, ugh. I love the train of thought so much that I'm trying to think of how to, I don't know, transition more to your career. Um, the first thought that comes to my mind is I just love when you can tangibly see the hand of blessing on someone's life. God's blessing, like we're talking about you just saying, okay, there's no plan B. Okay, God, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to do. And just for the sake of our listeners, did you just want to speed run kind of the arc of your career from beginning to where you are right now?
Yeah, in fact, I was thinking when I was reading through your kind of pre-questions, I was like, something that I would encourage your age range and like your level of getting into a career. And something as a father I tell to my daughter all the time is be humble, be willing to work harder than anybody else, and realize that nobody owes you anything. And what'll come full circle, kind of come back around, is like when I started, I got out of college, I got out of grad school, and I was married halfway through grad school. So me and my wife dated the first year of grad school, and then that summer we got married, and we were married the second year of grad school. After grad school, we packed up and moved back to California where I had grown up. And so we were like, we're going back home. My mom and dad had moved away while I was in college. It was one of those like I'm gone, so they just no. My mom and dad worked at a girls' home in Mexico, so that they moved while I was gone. So I came home and I didn't have any family to come back to per se. I didn't have I couldn't like move back in with mom and dad. It was like, well, okay, we're on our own, which was great. So we got to California, and man, I like started job hunting like hardcore. I've got a master's degree, and in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I want to make X amount of dollars. I can remember we'd be in the grad student lab, and we'd all be talking like, yeah, how much do you think we're gonna make? Oh, we're gonna make this much. Oh yeah, yeah. Like, oh yeah.
That's
Bunch of
awesome.
knuckleheads.
Oh
And
my
so
God.
we got to California. I'm there in California, and 9/11 happens. And the economy, like the world just shuts down. And like I can't find a job anywhere. Like I am like and this is like old school. Like there was not like Indeed or Jobs.com or anything. Like you were like filling out applications and like hand delivering them to people and trying to like. I mean, there were some you could do some digital
Yellow
stuff, but
Pages
most
or
part, yeah.
mm,
So I'm like I am like hunting around. My wife's working at Burger King and Target. I am working at Walmart Portrait Studios. So do you know the little photography studio in
Yeah,
Walmart?
I do know
yeah.
that.
It was awful. It was
Oh
so
my
awful.
word.
It was the worst thing ever, but at least it was art related. It was me going like, "Hey, kids, look at
Oh my word.
so yeah, so it was probably a good 3 months, 4 months of us just doing crummy jobs and we're in California. So as this is, I mean, we've been married 24 years. So 24 years ago, the rent in California was $1,000 a month, which is like 2,500 now. It was like so much money. It was just like, oh my goodness. And so then I finally found a job through a temp agency and it was doing graphic design work. And it was kind of crummy work. It was catalog, like just building a catalog using not CorelDRAW, sorry, using Quark Express, which I don't even think is around anymore. I think InDesign kind of took over Quark Express. So it was literally like a 400-page catalog of these little computer components and all these specs, and then the price. And it was a company that sold computer components, and I was like, let's go. So I got in there and like I said, I worked my tail off. I was like, I'm gonna blow these people away with, and it was the lamest, stupidest job, but I was like, I'm gonna make this the coolest thing ever. It was the dumbest thing ever, but I was like, how do I make this really cool? And so it was like just thinking through, like, okay, what if these sections we color categorize them, so you're going from this kind of component to this kind of component, and it could be a visual cue, and they're like, oh, that's cool, like because I was working with a bunch of project managers and engineers, and they don't think that way. So they were like, "Oh, that's great," and I just proved myself. And like I started off like super low pay, but by the time I left there, I was a senior graphic designer, and they started giving me like, "Hey, can you actually do an ad campaign for all this stuff?" And I was like yes, and I never, and this is just maybe how I'm wired or how I was raised, but I've never gone in ever thinking like, well, I have a master's degree, so you got to just make me here. I was like, I'm wherever you put me, that's great, and I'm going to show you why you should put me here in this other
Mm.
spot. I'm going to show you. I've never once in my career asked for a raise. Like I've never gone in and be like, hey, I feel like I'm doing a great job. I need to have a raise or I need a new title. I've just worked super hard and I've always had a goal of like, I want to do that. And what are the paths that I have to do to get there? And I'm going to show them that I can do that. And I think that's something that I've noticed it just in my own work experience is like a lot of and I hate I hate to like stereotype, but like the Gen Zers, like they come in with this entitlement of like, well, like of course I should be paid this, and of course I should be doing that. And it's like, oh, it's not quite how it works. Like sometimes you get to do the crummy work, and that's how you kind of prove yourself. And I may just be old school and totally wrong. Maybe that's the right way to come in and be like confident, like I want this. Can you get it? Maybe I don't know, but for me, it's like just hard work and kind of pushing yourself. So I think to answer your question, like kind of my path is like from there. Actually, from San Diego. I was doing that catalog work, but it was not challenging to me. I kind of worked my way up and I got to a point where I was like, well, I don't think there's a lot more for me here to grow. And then PCC reached out and they were like, hey, would you be interested in coming and teaching? And I was like, ooh, that sounds pretty fun. So I packed up, went to Pensacola. I taught there for 3 years. I was pretty young out of my career. Like I'd only been on the job for, 3 years and then went to PCC and taught. And it was super fun, but if I came back to teach, I would do it totally different now than I did. Like I was what 20, I think I was like 27 or 28 years old. So I was a kid. Um, I would approach it a lot different, but it was kind of fun because I came back with some actual experience. So I had a fun connection with the students. One thing that I struggled with as a teacher, I loved teaching, but I'm not super organized. Like my brain is just like so like keeping like all the grading and all like I hated keeping track of all the records and all the like the Excel sheets and all that stuff. And then also grading, I really struggled with grading because I had teachers, they're not there anymore at PCC, but I had teachers that they would be like B, A, C. And I was like, as a teacher, I was like, I feel like I owe these kids the explanation. So I would like spend all this time and I would redraw the logos and I would that's just how my brain works. I'm like, oh, this logo could be this. And so I trace over their tracing paper and redraw their logo and be like, oh, if you did this.
So you were teaching graphic design.
Yeah, I was teaching graphic design. Cool. Yeah. Oh, so I kind of back up. I was commercial art undergrad, or I don't, not commercial. What do you guys call it now? Is that studio art?
That would be graphic design, I think. So commercial art kind of split into two different majors. So there's two visual arts majors now. And there's studio art, which is traditional drawing, painting, sculpting, illustration. We do get into a lot of digital work too, but illustration heavy. And then graphic design is more what you think of like Illustrator, Photoshop kinds of things, image manipulation, web design, those kinds of things.
Okay, so I was studio art undergrad.
Gotcha.
So I was illustration and painting. But then in grad school, I kind of switched over to graphic design, which I probably ended up loving a little bit better, anyways. So, but yeah, I don't know how I got switched around, but I lost my train of thought.
You were teaching for graphic design, redoing logos, commenting,
yeah. So like I started kind of like overwork, like killing myself because the graphic design project would be like I'd have like 30 students and they'd turn in 4 logo designs, so I got 30 times 4, and I'm like trying and my dad was in ministry and was a principal of our Christian school, and like his whole life was the church. Like we didn't really go on vacations because he like had to be part of the ministry, and so as a kid growing up, we didn't. Our whole life was just that. And I remember one night, my daughter was like 2 years old. She came into the living room and I had projects all over the floor, and I was like, "Mika, get away! Like stop!" I literally like pumped the brakes. I was like, "Wow, this is like becoming too much for me. Like I'm having a hard time handling this and being a parent." Like I was probably just too young. So we packed up and moved to Fort Collins and opened an art gallery. And then
Roundhouse, right?
Yeah. And so we like represented Adam Clegg, we represented Nate Drashinin, we represented Brian Jekyll, we represented even TJ Cunningham was in one of our art shows when he was like still in college.
Oh, nice.
So
I know
some
all of
pretty
those
cool
people.
stuff.
Wow. That's so fun.
Yeah, and then like 2008 hit, the economy tanked, and we kind of, it was like my buddy was like, "Hey, I gotta go find a real job to pay for my family and stuff." So he bounced, and it was like, "Well, I'm gonna go ahead and just close the gallery." And then I was doing freelance work for a little bit, And then I found OtterBox on Craigslist when it was a super small company, like 200 employees. And I was like, never heard of OtterBox. I don't even own a cell phone, but I can do all these things. And I applied and I got the job. And that's the long story short. Because I actually didn't get I didn't get a phone till like I had worked there for probably 7 years and never had a phone
Dude.
because I'm cheap.
Oh man.
My day to day is a lot of input from trend research and looking at style guides and getting information from my team around me of like, hey, this is really hot right now, or even working with Disney and saying like, hey, these three things are really hot right now, or this is what's coming up, and like taking that information, assimilating it, and kind of figuring out how to put that into a project. Something that as an artist we always have to be super aware of. Um, it's something that I try to be aware of myself because I find myself as an artist kind of doing the same thing. And to me, it gets kind of boring. And I'm like, not that you can't have your style, but it's like I want to make sure that I'm not just regurgitating my same. I like to do it this way, so I just keep doing that same thing. I like to look at different trends and different styles of art and figure out how can I adapt some of that into my just to make it fresh again.
So like in terms of satisfaction, would you say that after input, when you are able to do something new, it makes the product a lot more satisfying? Like, oh, this actually did stretch me, or oh yeah, this kept me interested.
Yeah, so like on the phone cases, like we're dealing with this like really interesting canvas shape, right? And
Yeah.
so playing with ideas of like how can I is there an effect that I could do on this? And like just thinking through creatively what are some things and like sometimes I'll try things and they fail and you're like, oh, okay. But I'll see it and I'll be like, oh wait, if I did it this way though, it would work. And I think that's kind of cool to get a finished product in a case, and you're like, that looks awesome! Like that's so cool. And like for me, probably I even get more joy or a kick out of people around me and my coworkers, like coming up on and being like, "Whoa, what's that? Like, no way!" It's like, yes, that's the desired response. That's what I wanted. I wanted that feeling of people going like, "What? You did? How'd you do that?" It's like, yes, I love that.
Man,
So
you
I think
know,
always looking for those
yeah.
opportunities of like, what are those little things that you can do to always make something and I've been doing this for 14 years almost at Otter, and so it's like it gets harder and harder, but it gets more rewarding when you do pull off something that people are like, "What?"
You know what's really interesting about that is uh on the front end of that, okay, there's a lot of work. There's a lot of work, intentionality of okay, I'm a team. Let's put our minds together. I'm going to learn from you. I'm going to learn from you. I'm going to learn from you. I'm going to input and then do an output. And then when you do make something awesome, it almost makes that, as you were saying, that connection with people out of it that much more sweet. So like when it comes to God's calling, it's almost like when you invest into God's calling in the creative, intentional way that a work ethic would do it, the effect after the fact usually has to do with people, where like your coworker comes up behind you and is like, "Whoa, dude, that's so cool." And it's like that right there is that human connection of we made something together. And yeah,
And even like a step further, like with what I'm doing, it's a product that is going out into market, and to get that same response and people actually purchase it, and you see numbers come back where project managers going like, "Oh, we sold this many, and this is how much we made." You're like, "Whoa, that's crazy! That's super cool." And it'd be the same for art. Like you're doing a painting for a gallery, you're producing it, you get that satisfaction of it, but to put it into a gallery or a gallery to accept it is like, okay, wow, that's cool. And then for somebody to walk in and take their hard-earned money and say, I want that hanging in my house, it's like you need it, it's like mind blowing.
Mm.
It's like, what? Like, it's so hard to wrap your brain around somebody coming and opening their wallet to purchase something that you created with your hands. It's like, it's a really cool feeling. I'm like,
We
wow, somebody actually appreciates the gift that I've been given, and I've been able to kind of pass it along. And like, that's hanging in somebody's wall, and they find pleasure in looking at it. It's
we
pretty cool.
yeah, we were actually talking with Mark Burrell a few months ago on that point. I forget what we asked him and how what prompted his answer, but he said that when he's painting something, he has to ask himself, what am I going to make interesting about this that's going to be worth someone looking at for 30 years? Where, or like he had recently sold something and like he said they hung it in their bedroom and it's like, wow, like they're going to wake up every day and look at this. So it's like, am I putting that intentionality, that design, that it's going to be worth that time?
So I have a Brian Jekyll painting hanging on my wall in my bedroom, and I I pass by it every day, and oftentimes I will take a quick stop and just be like, man. And I've had that thing for probably at least 14 years. And I love it. It's just like so beautiful. It's so amazing.
Mhm.
And it's like that's what I want my artwork to be. I make goofy toys and like just build stuff, but it's really I am very passionate about it. And to have somebody who's a toy collector purchase one and for them to drop, 200 bucks on a little toy that I built, I'm like, that's crazy. Like I'm super cheap. I would never spend that much money, but they find so much beauty in it and they want it. I'm like, wow. And I don't know where they are. I don't see them in their house and where they're placed, but I can only imagine, that it's like in this really cool toy shelf that they have that they collect all the toys. I don't know.
It's almost to me the first thought that comes to my mind after you say that is one of the beautiful things of life is you do something or you create something and it's in someone's house. It's just another one of those proofs almost that you were here.
Yeah.
Like God created us, and since we're created in God's image, we create. It's just another way of reflecting God. And so like when you create something and someone else is blessed by that, it's almost like that relationship that we have us to God and vice versa is reflected. And I made something for you, you're blessed by it, and you can remember me by that.
And I think there's a lot of fields that are that way. A lot of times we think like art is that tangible thing that's hanging in somebody's room, but that applies also to a school teacher who has invested their time to raise a kid. And like my daughter's kindergarten teacher is still at our church, and she came up to me the other day and she's like, "Hey, I just want you to know I'm praying for Mika." I'm like, "Wow!" Like she invested in my daughter to give her her path, and like again, that's something tangible that she can see that she can say, I've left my mark. There's some maybe even like for you for music, you record a CD that music is a CD, record, tape,
Yeah.
MP3, whatever digital file. You
Yeah.
record music. That music is that mark that you're leaving behind of like, hey, I was here, and people are enjoying this, and people will enjoy it for years to come. For somebody to listen to a song 5, 10, 20 times over and over, it's like that's pretty cool. Now, like, sorry, math teachers, there's probably nothing really. No, Excel
Yeah.
spreadsheets, out nothing there.
Oh my word. Oh man. Well, and I think in another frame, let's go to phone cases. So like, okay, my phone case right now is black. I mean, there's literally nothing to it. But historically, if I'm gonna get something, I want it to, I guess, reflect who I am. And so it's like when you make a design, you're just making something really cool that you just love. And yeah, you're hired to do it, but okay, I'm gonna put this amazing design out there. And someone out there is gonna think, man, that reflects my personality and this fandom, and this, as you said, is worth my money because it resonates with me. And like you said, it's you never know who's gonna have that moment. But
And yeah,
yeah,
so I'm right now we're dealing at Otter, we're dealing with the licensing and looking at partners and like who do we want to partner with, and going through a whole list of things. And I was thinking about this today. I was like, it's so interesting. We are trying to tap into the certain consumers' personalities and give them something that they can identify with. They're like, I love Star Wars. Okay, like how do we tap into that? And it helps to be passionate about those things as well. I'm kind of a Disney nerd, despite what you think about all the craziness that's going on. But just like the to the core of what Walt wanted it to be, it's like it's super fun. And so that passion, I can put that into my phone case because I'm like, this is really fun for me, and I want it to be as fun for the end consumer as it is for me. That's what I'm looking for. I want them to enjoy it as much as I do. And I think if you're in a job where you're just like cranking through stuff where and to be totally honest, I've done designs like that where I'm like, I'm not like super passionate about this, but I've been asked to make this case, so I'll make it. It's not as rewarding as the case that I'm like, this is so fun. Like I love this, and I hope people enjoy it as much as I do. That's a better place to be. It's probably the same for a painting or a piece of music. It's like there's probably paintings that you've done that you're like, eh, it's all right.
Yeah.
Like I don't love it,
yeah.
but I got
Well,
it done. It was I got the project done. The task is finished. But there's other paintings that you're like, wow, like this is super cool, and I hope other people think it's super cool.
and I think part of the work ethic behind that is you have to get good enough at your skill or at your craft where you can, when you do find that thing you're really passionate about, or you just really want to have fun with this, you're not having to think through all these technical details that you would have otherwise learned before. It's like, okay, I have this idea, and I don't know if you've been in the place, but like you're almost watching your hands do all the work. Like you have this idea, you have this drive, and you're just like watching it come together in front of you. And it's super satisfying in the moment, but there's also a lot of back end history and skill that had to be refined. We're almost in another way, like you chose to put yourself under a lot of pressure in some areas to grow. I'm going to push, I'm going to stretch myself. So then when you get to the thing you really love, you don't have to stress out over that. It's like, okay, I've laid this foundation down, I've set the foundation, now I can just go and just do it. Or for the projects you don't love, it's like, okay, I don't love this. I'm not that passionate about it, but the skills are there. And I can still know how to direct my skills exactly where they need to go.
You're still going to grow from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think both of you would say this in your fields. There are experts, masters that, like, for example, you'll probably sit down and watch Jameson sketch something, and you're like, good night. Like, to watch his dad, I don't know if you've gotten to see his dad, Brian Jekyll, draw or
Yeah.
paint.
Multiple times. Yeah.
Mind blowing.
Yes.
Mind blowing. You're just like, and that's what any good master or expert does. They can put something down and they're so precise with what they do. There's no hesitation or questioning, at least in our sight. But I have no clue what's going on inside their head. They're probably like, "Oh, geez, I don't know what I just did there, but we'll fix that later." They just don't want it. And I think that's something that it comes with the time and experience, like that repetition. Like 4 years is not enough. 6 years is not enough. Like 10 years, you're like you might be finally to a point where like, okay, I'm starting to be able to just do this with confidence. And I think that's a hard thing for a lot of younger people is they want it to it's like come on, just happen. Like and it's that repetition and failing And a good term that we use at Otter is fail forward. Like it's okay to fail as long as you fail forward and you learn something from that. If you're failing backwards, that's not good. But failing forward and like learning from your mistakes and growing each time. That's what like my toy designs. I am not by trade a toy designer, but I have a lot of knowledge of composition and form and like painting, and so I have an advantage because I have a background. But I've been building. I think my YouTube channel has been going for like 6 years now. And I'll be totally honest with you, when I started it, I told myself, and I think you have to kind of set goals and boundaries for yourself. I told myself, I'm going to do this consistently for 5 years. No matter what, I'm going to do at least one build every other week, no matter what. And there have been weeks where I do not want to do it at all. I'm like, I am so busy. I'm so done. I don't want to do this. But I have set for myself that milestone. And so even when I don't want to do it, I like get off my rear end and I force myself to do it. And I have a lot of people, like I got so many projects and so many things going on. And I have friends and coworkers that are like, how do you find the time to do all this stuff? It's crazy. And in the meantime, they're like, I want to do this, but I don't have the time, and I want to do this. And then I hear them going like, oh yeah, I was binge watching this episode on Netflix, or I was binge watching this on Amazon Prime. And I'm like, well,
There it is.
you got to get off your hiney and go do it. You can't be like sitting around wishing that all this is going to happen. And I remember when I was in grad school, Brian Jekyll told us, he said, you'll always find time for the things that you love. And whether family, your art, or if you love just being lazy and laying around doing nothing, he said you'll always find time for the things that you love. And I think that it's super true for me. And that's like, and sometimes I don't want to do it, but I've like forced myself to say, I'm just going to have the fortitude to say, I'm going to continue and force through it, even when I don't want to do it.
Mm.
I can't stop because if I stop, it's done. Once I stop, it's done. Because as humans, we are so lazy naturally. If it's easy, like we'll take the easy route 100% of the time.
Mm.
If we don't have the fortitude and the mindset of like I'm going to do this, not to get like crazy, spiritual, but it's the same thing with like church and like like I grew up in church, and I'm thinking back in my youth group, I maybe one kid in my youth group that still is active in church.
Mm.
And it's because it's just that mental fortitude to say, hey, like I know that this is going to be the right thing to do, so I'm going to continue to do it no matter what. And there's times where I'll come home Wednesday night from work and there's Bible study at 7 o'clock and I am exhausted and I'm like, ah, yeah, it would be nice to just like chill. But I like force, and I don't mean that in a bad way, like I'm forcing myself, I got to do this, but it's like, it's a character thing of like, hey, this is the right thing to do. I want to be a testimony to my daughter to show her that it has value, it has merit. And so I'm going to do it no matter what. And I think we can take those things in our life of having the mental mindset of like, I need to do this because it's the best thing for me, even though I don't always want to do it. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
Oh, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that, on any of that, Megan?
Ooh, so, and you'll be the better one to comment on this with Andrew Huberman and his
Oh.
neuroplasticity.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Uh, you were the one that actually watched
Good.
it.
Have you ever heard of a neuroscientist named Andrew Huberman?
No.
So he has a podcast. He's a worthy YouTuber. Google. I think you'd find him interesting. But he's a podcaster. He's by trade a teacher, a neuroscientist at Stanford, and he has a podcast. And at the beginning of every podcast, he prefaces saying, "This podcast is separate from my research and studies and profession at Stanford. They're two different things, so they don't represent each other." But he had David Goggins on actually, and if anyone's hearing this, uh, David Goggins is a mouth, so viewer discretion advised. But he was talking about neuroplasticity and how there's a part of the brain that that's essentially tied to willpower almost, but it's only grown by decisions that are uncomfortable. And so that threshold is absolutely different for everybody. So like if I'm scared of water, and I decide I'm going to jump into the water, I'm doing something to my brain telling me it's possible, I can grow. Versus someone who loves water, that's going to do nothing for their brain because it's just. And so his point was if you do something difficult enough for long enough, eventually it's just your lifestyle and your brain has set a new threshold for difficult. And when you get there, you have to find something new. You have to feel out, okay, where's the next twinge moment of, oh,
Yeah.
I don't want to do that, but you
Yeah.
just got to do it anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny because I'm doing that. I'm kind of doing that right now. Like I was building, like I was just doing toy mashups and I was just swapping heads and kind of simple things. And then I, so the build that I'm working on right now, I literally I'm kind of doing some sketches and thinking through. I've never built a toy completely out of wood, like the entire thing wood. I've done some wood components, and so I'm kind of doing this. Like I'm like I'm not a carpenter. I don't really know how to use wood probably the correct way, but I want to try it. I have no clue if I can pull it off or not, but it's kind of exciting to me of like maybe I could pull something off. Like maybe I could do it. I don't know. It might fail. It might be playing, but it's worth a shot. And I think that's a cool thought that I've never heard of before. But I'm kind of like, hey, I'm kind of doing that. Like,
Maybe we'll look for it.
Well, plus it's really
yeah,
fun to watch. Something else that it's kind of similar. Have you heard of the musician Jacob Collier?
I don't know the name.
Totally fine, totally fine. But in the music world, he's labeled like the Gen Z of no, the Mozart of Gen Z. But
Okay.
anyways, uh, prodigy musician. Well, he was doing a concert, and some fan in the audience wanted to teach him to juggle, and so and so he just brought an audience member on stage, and so you have this like prodigy musician who's just like insane, learning to juggle in front of everybody, and it was fun because it was so fun to watch someone that you know is so good at something be so beginner at something else. And it's interesting because I think people give so much more grace than we would think they do.
Yeah.
Like if I'm going to begin again at something else, it's easy to be our own worst critic or think, "Oh, the public's going to judge me." Or, "Oh, they're going to say, "Oh, that's bad." But in reality, it's like if you've already earned my trust as a person, then when I watch you, I'm not as much looking at this very simple wooden product. I'm thinking, "Oh man, I know Dave. I know that if he stuck with that for just a little longer, I know something even cooler could. I'm excited to see where this could go. You know,
Right.
so
Yeah,
it's yeah,
totally. That's awesome. And
uh,
I think on the flip side, like people do have grace, but when you put yourself out there, there
yeah,
is that small group that are just brutal. Like on
yeah.
YouTube, there's people that are like they're rough, and you have to kind of as an artist, I have pretty thick skin, so I've kind of decided I'm always gonna take the high road. Like I'm not gonna get in arguments or like fight with people. I'm just gonna, if they're like, I think that I just had a comment not too long ago. The guy just typed, "Love your videos, love your process, hate your voice, will never watch you again."
Oh my word.
Oh.
And I was like, "Thanks for the view." I
I
don't,
got your view anyways.
yeah, I hate my voice too. I mean, I don't know what to
Oh
tell you.
man. They're
So I think sometimes putting yourself out there,
yeah.
there's a little bit of a fear of that, but I would say get over it. Like it's okay. Like you're and you guys are starting this podcast off. You're gonna make mistakes. There's gonna be dumb stuff. You're gonna look back 2 years from now and be like, wow, those first ones were horrible. Like this was crazy. But you can't grow if you don't start. You can't learn. You can't get better if you don't even start. So at least starting is what I and on my YouTube channel, that's one of my big for me. I don't know if it resonates that way, but I'm like, I want to encourage people to not be afraid to try it. I say this often. I'm like, it's a toy that I found at a thrift store that I repainted. If you mess it up, you're out 50 cents. Big deal. Like try it. Have fun. Don't be afraid. Don't worry what other people are going to say about it because there are going to be people that will find the value in it. And even if it turned out dumb, you learn something from it and you'll get better. So,
The memory that came to my mind, you wouldn't know this about me. So I used to compete in yo-yoing. It was something I picked up in, I guess, elementary school. After I graduated college, I said, I haven't competed in like 8, 9 years, something crazy like that. I I should just enter a competition, like just for the kicks of it. Just practice a little every day, learn a couple new tricks, get a routine together. And so I show up to this competition, and the music that I was going to perform to, something fell through. They couldn't play it. So literally a guy picked a random song in his iPod or iPhone and just played, and and um and so I got last place, but I had a blast. And so um this guy Dazzling Dave, he was one of like actually titled one of the 8 world yo-yo masters. He was one of the guys that got me into it. He comes up to me after the competition and he's like, Chris, I gotta hand it to you. I saw something today I've never seen before. I've never seen anyone do so badly and walk off stage with a smile. And it was like, you don't know how to take it. It's like, thanks, Dave. Appreciate it, man.
I give me a compliment.
I know,
That's
but
amazing.
like the fun part of it was when I was younger, my dad put a lot of pressure on me of like be the best and win or don't do it at all. Like
Yeah.
put effort into it.
Yeah.
And so there was some good things about it. There were some unhealthy things about it. But for me to just say, I'm gonna have fun. I'm gonna pick it up. I'm gonna try it. I've been picking it up again and just go for it. And
Yeah.
if you have fun with it, there's not much people can say to that.
Yeah.
Now, like, unless someone's paying you or it's your job or your career and you have to, has to be equality, like
Yeah.
that's another thing. But if you're just trying something and you have a blast and it's your passion and I mean, you like you said, there will always be haters in a sense, but the people that it resonates with, I feel like will win out usually.
Yeah. And that'd be the thing. Like I'll have 2 or 3 bad comments and like 400 amazing comments that are just like you're such an inspiration to me or you've inspired me to build something with my son. It's like okay,
Man.
that's where it's at. That's what it's all about. It's like I'm just here. I'm not a professional. I'm not claiming to be a professional on
Yeah.
the when I boys. I'm just having a good time, and I hope that people enjoy it. And when people are like, "You're such an inspiration," it's like I'm just a nerd having a good time. I like I'm glad that like you got this and you go do it. So
I love that. Well, for what it's worth, after the video call at PCC, um, and I'd asked you to be on the podcast, I looked up your YouTube channel. And it's interesting because like you can talk about something, and this is also so to anyone watching this video, go and look up it's Dr. Toys
yeah, just
on
on YouTube.
YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, just look it up. But I pulled it up and I was like, man, this is so cool. And the thing was, like the editing was very good. That there was very little, if anything, distracting from what you were trying to show. And like those are the types of things that only that come over time, where it's like, okay, start the camera, hit record, make something cool. But like for you, 5, 6 years into it, it's just like so much more streamlined. And when I watch a video, I'm thinking, okay, it's not Disney, but at the same time, I can clearly see what's going on, and this is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go back to like my first videos, you'll be like, whoa, those are rough. They're bad.
Oh
I mean,
man.
even just over the span of this podcast, I mean, we've already seen so much growth on how, how much energy we have, how we go about it, what we talk
Oh yeah.
about, what we edit out, So
Yeah.
it's just one of those things. And that's a cool thing about either visual art or music is it's such a tangible product. You can see how you've grown and how you've changed and what you've made better and where you learned something. And I think that's a really encouraging thing for me. Like,
Hmm.
it's a good thing for me to look back on an old sketchbook and be like, gross. It's a good thing for that to happen
Hmm.
because it means I've moved on. I've learned, made something better.
And I think I may have brought this up in our talk that I did with the school, but it's like for me, probably one of the best lessons I've ever learned was my mom would always, because I was telling Megan when you were kind of setting some things up when I got 13th place, I was like, no, never again. Like I am so competitive, and like getting first place, you're kind of like, yeah. And my mom would say, remember, there's always somebody better than you.
Hmm.
And as an artist, I keep that in the back of my brain. And even at like building toys, there are so many amazing builders out there and so many amazing artists. And that just gives me more fire to like make even better. It's exciting. It's like
Hmm.
I'm glad that there's people out there that are better than me.
Yeah.
I'm not threatened by them. I'm encouraged and challenged by them because it's exciting to be
Hmm.
like, wow, there's more room for me to grow. This is awesome. Like this
Yeah.
is amazing. And I hope that I'm still that way when I'm in my 70s. I hope that I'm still like, man, like I can still grow and learn. This is amazing. It's so cool. I think
Yeah.
it's a good place to be as an artist.
I think two things on that. Number one, I think eternity will be like that, where we'll just like having a perfect mind, not having the sin nature, that laziness, just this never ending excitement that God is more for us, this
Yeah.
never ending excitement that there is more to be discovered, more to be learned, et cetera, et cetera. Um, I think a different angle on that that's kind of encouraged me over the past month or so. Um, it's well, over the past few months, I actually got depressed by the idea that okay, there will always be someone better than me. Like try as you might, there will always be someone better. And the then I found some people where I kind of veered more towards what you're saying of like, man, that's so cool. Okay, how did they learn to be like that? Okay, what's their mindset? And then like when I see how humble they are, I'm like, oh, well, whatever philosophy they're implementing, okay, it's really simple. Well, I can approach a project like this. Oh, that's so cool. And so then it's, a bit more encouraging to and from. But to the next level that I've also kind of been reminding myself is even though someone will always be better than you will always bring something to the table today that someone else didn't do today. Where like someone may be better than you, but you had an idea today they didn't think of, and only you could work on it in a way that you could work on it. And and sometimes that person who may be twice as good as you could pop over your shoulder and be like, "Whoa, I never would have thought of that. That's just so cool." And so it's like we think of things so one dimensionally or even two dimensionally, but it's like okay, they may be the best in like three out of the four areas, but there's that fourth area that only you are built to do. And that to me is just exciting of like, okay, if I pursue this career of music, someday someone's going to hear a song that no one else made, that God said, okay, I'm going to give this idea and it's going to be great. So that, I don't know, that's kind of been driving me forward the past few weeks of like, man, if I learn this, it's unique.
And I think going back to you being a TA, there's going to be situations where you'll have this knowledge and information that you're like, oh wow, this is like so like this is easy. But being humble and being mindful of, oh yeah, like just 3 years ago I was in the same spot. I didn't understand
Mhm.
like when they said, oh, it's a cooler temperature, cooler color, so add more blue. It was like I don't like just 3 years ago I didn't understand that, but now I'm like, oh, this is like it's like second nature to me. Having that humility to be able to not be like, wow, these kids are so dumb, but
Mhm.
be like, oh wow, like they don't understand like how can I communicate to them so they can grow and learn,
Mhm.
um, and to make them better because in a sense that's what you're better than them only because you've had more experience, but then there's somebody else that's better than you and so forth. But there is that breakthrough even as a TA. You'll come in and look at somebody's work and go like, wow, that's I remember when I taught actually, when I TA'd as a grad student, when I TA'd, I probably grew more as an artist as a TA than any time in my career because you have the knowledge and you've just been in the slog of like I'm doing it, and now you're at a point where you get to like talk through and communicate to somebody else how to do what you're doing, and you find yourself going like, whoa. I just told them they need to be mindful of the parallel lines and look at the angle that they're going at. And you're like, wow, I need to be mindful of that in my own work. You forget these things, you start talking through it, and you're like, wow, this is awesome. Like, and you'll start to feel yourself teaching something that you're like, I need to remember that. Like, that's good for me
Yeah,
as
that's
an artist. So, yeah. I
exactly.
think you're gonna super enjoy being a TA. It's really great.
I'm so excited. It's not guaranteed, so
Yeah, if you get to do it,
we'll
yeah.
see. But if I get
Yeah.
to do it, that's part of why I want that experience because, I mean, y- they say that you can never learn the basics too well,
Yeah.
and the basics are still fairly new to
Mm.
me. I didn't have any art experience before college, so this was me jumping in as a freshman with nothing. And there are so many people in that same boat. I think I could, I think I could give some people some talking points
Mm.
of just like, oh, well, here's how I figured this out. So like, for example, the example you brought up was color temperature. A lot of my work is purple. It leans purple at the moment because I was trying to learn color temperature and I didn't understand it very well. So, leans red, it's warmer, leans blue, it's cooler. Purple is the mixture of red and blue. And so by me learning things monochromatic purple and I would lean things red or blue, it helped me to understand the subtleties of color temperature. And now I can move on to other colors with that knowledge. So, that's just an example of like, okay, well, let's use this color as an example to help you understand what you're doing. That's probably the clearest one. So, I mean,
Well,
even things like that, I think I have a lot to add, and I would
yeah.
love to try. So we'll see, we'll see. But
Yeah.
either way, I mean, if that falls through, I'll find other ways to add value.
Yeah.
You'll still be able to be around
Oh
and
yeah.
help.
Yeah. Just a curveball question. What's something you've never been asked about before? Like in the past few weeks, has there been something cross your mind where it's like, I've never expressed this about my craft. I've never really let someone into this part of my mind process, whatever. Just like if this were your opportunity to share that, whatever it may be, is there anything that comes to mind?
The one thing that like pops in my brain right off the top of my head, and I've been thinking about it for the last couple weeks, um, is and sometimes I feel like I'm like maybe kind of cuckoo or crazy or I don't know, but like I don't know if a lot of people when I do my build, I'm just showing my process, but like I don't think people understand that I actually a lot of times I will have like a toy or a component or a piece, and it'll be sitting on my desk or on a shelf right over here for like a year or 2 years. And I'll just keep it there. And I every time I look at it, I'm like, I have an idea for that, but I don't know exactly I haven't quite it's like it has to like manifest itself in my head. I rarely sketch out what I'm going to build. I kind of like, I know, once I know in my head what I want it to be, I just make it. And I normally have no sketches, no references. This is not good advice for art. Like you probably should have stuff, but like for
Right.
my builds, like I literally, so my last build that I just launched last Sunday was a Tic Tac container with a little pilot in it. I've had that little pilot for probably at least a year and a half. And I've had the Tic Tac containers sitting in my drawer. A buddy gave those to me probably 2 years ago. I've used a couple of them on different builds, but as soon as I found that little guy, I knew I wanted some kind of, I wanted him to be a pilot. And I literally have had this like bouncing in my head for like 2 years. But I've got like 30 or 40 of those things bouncing around in my head. It's not just like one at a time. I've got all these ideas in my head, and I've got all these different containers and different things that I know what I want them to be, but I don't know exactly how to approach it yet. And sometimes I'm scared to approach it. Like I don't know what to do. So I'm afraid. So it just sits there and it like haunts me on my desk.
Mm.
And I'm like, ah, I know what I want to do, but I don't know how to do it. And so it just like sits there until I finally, I'm just like, I got it. I know what to do. Like I have an idea. Like it's weird. It just like clicks
Yeah.
like that. It's so bizarre. I don't know really how to explain it other than it's just like it happens and I have to build it. Like I can't, there's nothing that will stop me. I have to like create it. And that's where on the art talk I was talking like I'll lay in bed like I don't, I've never been diagnosed as insomniac but like I will lay in bed till a lot of times I'll work till like 12:31 in the morning. Like I can't stop working like on my builds. And then I'll go lay in bed and I lay in bed and I can't turn off my brain and I'm like working through problems and I'm like, "Oh, I know if I did this and I'll go to sleep around 3:30 in the morning and then I get up at 6:45 to go to work." Like,
That's
and that
very, very familiar.
like I can't
Oh
turn my brain
man.
off, and I'm just wired weird,
Yeah.
and it's who I am. Like I love it. I can't stop.
That's awesome. One thing that I take out of that is a lot of times going back to what you said about Gen Zers, this, I want this now, I want this now, I want this now. We tend to treat ideas the same way in the time frame we give an idea to come to fruition, where it's like, oh, I had this great idea. Oh, I guess it's not feasible. And then you just like let go of it. As opposed to, I guess another way to put it is like honoring an idea enough of, oh my goodness, I have this cool idea. Like I tell Megan all kinds of ideas. I'm like, crazy idea. Megan's like, oh, well, that's really nice. And I'm like, yeah, someday. Yeah. But it's like a way to, if I'm going to honor it, I'm realizing 3 years from now, that could be its time. Or like, okay, write it down somewhere, keep it on the shelf, like you said, and realize, okay, ideas can come anytime, but their time could be years from now.
And you may not have the ability or the skills right now at this point to execute it. But 3 years from now, you might have those abilities and skills. So keep like don't let those dreams die. Like I've got this is my Dr. Toys project list, and I write down like everything, all my ideas. I'm like, okay, I want to do this. People make recommendations. I write them down in this book because I don't want to forget them. I'm like, at one point, I was like, this is a killer idea right here. This has been stewing in my brain for probably 4 years. I want to build a ray gun, like an old school, like 50s sci-fi ray gun.
Yeah.
And keeping my eyes out for like good, like at yard sales, maybe like a good toy gun or something. And I just really haven't found the components, but I have stuff that are part of it collected in these drawers right here. So I have these ideas that I'm like, and I jot them down, and they're there in the back of my mind that I'm like, I'm gonna do it. But it's just
Love
not the
that.
time yet. So yeah, don't
Yeah.
let the dreams die. Like keep them alive, and like you said, it doesn't have to. There is that like, oh, I want to do that, and you try it, and you're like, oh, that failed. Oh well, guess that was a dumb idea, and maybe it's maybe just not the right time. So I love that. Like let it incubate, let it like process, let you gain some additional skills to actually be able to execute it maybe even better than before.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
a great idea. Love
that's
it.
how it feels for painting synesthesia. That's the entire, it's a whole trust fall kind of project. Like I have the passion for it. I've tried a couple different ways. Um, I kind of think of synesthesia as puzzle pieces in the sense of like there I can put them together in a couple different ways and it's still true to the original form. I could paint abstract, pure original form. I've tried uh macro photography based on the textures and the colors, and then I'll try like a realistic painting of the texture. I wasn't a huge fan of that, but I tried it. I did illustration, so whatever color impressions I had, I took that as a base and I built a composition off of it and tried to turn it into an illustration. And so that was cooler, but I don't think that's the final form yet. So, stepping into masters, I really like this train of thought because um yeah, it's not an instant gratification kind of product. It's going to take me a lot of time and a lot of trial by error, and that's okay. I know
It's
it's
gonna be
gonna be.
discouraging too. There'll be discouraging times where you're just like,
Yeah.
man, what is going on? I don't know
Yeah.
what- But it's part of the process. It's part of the journey.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's a maker that I follow, and he always says it's part of the journey. It's just part of the
Mhm.
journey. I on my builds, like this past week, I I had an $8 bottle of wash, and I'm like working on something, and I like grabbed something, and I went deep, and it just spilled. I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, what an idiot! Like, why did I?" And I was like, I don't want to do it. I'm so frustrated, and it's like, oh well, it's just something so small and so minor, but it can like set your mindset of like, I'm done. I'm done. And it's like it's ridiculous. Like quit over me spilling a bottle of wash.
Mm.
So I think having the fortitude of like again, if you grew up in youth group or church and it was like have the mindset of like you're gonna not do this or have the mindset of you're going to do this and like just sticking to that and like knowing that this is what is the right thing to do, so I'm going to do that.
Mm.
Mhm.
I think we have to set these goals and markers for ourselves in our life because grad school it's fun, but it is also going to be super challenging. And I guarantee you, there are going to be times where you're like, I am so inadequate. Like, why am I even here? Like, I stink at this craft. I'm the worst. This is dumb. What am I even doing? That's going to happen. I guarantee you. That happens to me at work. Like, sometimes I'm just working through something. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I stink. What's the imposter syndrome?
Oh
You're
yeah.
like, how did I get here? Like, why are they paying me to do this? Like, I stink at what I do, and it's just our mind playing with us, and it's like, okay, no, I know that I have the ability, I know that I have the skill. I just need to stop, take a deep breath, kind of gather my thoughts and rely on like, okay, I know what I need to do. I'm just not doing it. Sometimes we get so worked up in a frenzy that we actually make things more chaotic and crazy versus just stopping and being like, okay, what what are the fundamentals? What do I need to go back to the basics? Like let's just start back at the beginning. Like I'm getting myself so spun up. Um, but it's having that mental fortitude of knowing this is going to happen, and I just gotta when it does happen, I have to be totally aware of it
Mm.
and almost do like hey, knock it off, like stop it,
Yeah, well, that was
don't
one
let
of
yourself
my
do it.
questions to you. I'm not sure if you saw it. I think I got sent a
Yeah,
little late, but
I
um
read it. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So along the lines of when you get to that spot, or even if you're starting a new project and you're just like, how do you clear your mind and what do you tell yourself of like, okay, this is why I'm here. Like you said, go back to the fundamentals, just kind of clear your brain, go back to the fundamentals. What are some other things that you tell yourself when you end up in the middle of the process?
So I think it is a job. So sometimes it's not fun. I'll be totally transparent. I just told my coworker this morning. I woke up this morning and like I was laying in bed and I was like, ugh, I just don't want to go today. Like I just don't want to go into work. Like I don't know why. No, nothing dramatic is happening. Nothing. It's just I was just exhausted. I didn't want to do it. But I'm doing it because I have, like, I've got responsibilities, I've got things I need to take care of. And so it's like, okay. And it kind of goes back to what I was talking about, just like my YouTube channel saying, like, I'm going to do it no matter what. Like, I have made up my mind that I'm going to do it. And so I get out of bed, you go do it, and you make the best of the day. And I think once you get there and you get to see your coworkers and you're like, kind of chat, and you're like, oh, okay. And then you get to, get into your day. But then on the flip side, there's other days where I'm like busting up. I'm like, I got this cool, like, I can't believe the project I'm working on right now. It's so amazing. And like, I'm so pumped and so excited. I can't wait to go do it. It's like, so we've already launched these cases, but we did some Nightmare Before Christmas cases and
Wow.
play with like Jack Skellington artwork. And I was just like, I get, they're paying to make a Jack Skellington case. Like, like, woohoo! So I think, as humans, there's always going to be those like bummer days where you're just like, I just don't feel it today. It's just human nature. That's just how we're wired. And then there's other days where you're like, you've got this energy and this excitement. So I think for me, like just balancing and understanding that of like, okay, I know there's going to be good days. I know there's going to be bummer days, but I still got to do it no matter what. And so I'm not going to dwell on the bummer days where I don't. It's like you just got to get yourself in motion and doing it. Once you get yourself in motion, there's going to be days where you're like I was talking about in the art talk, you're 60, 70% in your painting and you're kind of lost and you're like, I don't know where to go anymore. And you don't want to do it. You got to just get yourself in motion. Like just get up, start to do it and start putting the brush down. And then it might be another day of just slapping paint down. You're like, that was a crummy day. Like, I don't know what happened.
Hmm.
But eventually, if you'll come back to it and you'll because you're putting yourself in motion to continue to do it, you're gonna have that like, oh, there it is. There it is. Okay. Whew, that took like 3 days to get through, but I got it.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, we have a writer friend. She she said a lot of times she'll end the day with a sentence that's half finished. So when she comes back, she already has that momentum of a half finished sentence to springboard. It's not like, oh no, I have this great paragraph. What do I do? Like start with a half finished sentence or, 3 lines or start with a color palette. Give yourself one thing. One thing. I think
Something to look forward to.
you're
I
right.
think something else for me is like coming back to a clean space. I'm a crazy messy worker. Like I'm pulling stuff out to at the end. And again, I don't always feel like doing it, but like clean up the whole space. And then when you come back the next day, it's like, okay, like this
I
is
feel that. Totally feel that.
yeah.
There was a musician that made a comment. It was Jacob Collier doing research. But on a broader, more abstract level of what we're saying, the way he framed it is you kind of have to treat every day like you're a surfer, and every day you're going to wake up to different weather. You like some days there's waves, some days there's not waves, some days there's a storm, some days it's a sunny sky. But in any case, you've committed to the fact I'm going to go out and surf. And you have to find out, how do I learn to surf on this type of day? And the more skilled you get at surfing on those types of days, the better reference you have for when it comes around again of, okay, I've been through this before. I know how to, go about the day.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. I'm gonna steal that. Thank you. I'll steal it from who you stole it from.
I love that. Yeah. Man, well, this was an awesome conversation, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Who knows, maybe like 50, 60 episodes down the road, we'll have to have another catch up.
Hey, that sounds great to me. I'm always available.
Love it.
Oh, well, thank
Sweet.
you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you for
Yeah,
investing
you
some
bet.
time to us.
Yeah.
We're walking away with stuff to learn.
We're always learning.
Amen. Hey, have a good night, man.
All right, take it easy.